pointing, maybe kind of look at what we're looking at and look up there. I wonder if there's a way to do this without having all of these lights on. Can you still see the drawing, or is it still pretty dark?
No, it's good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. What about in the camera?
I did.
Okay, so one of the things that's really important, I think, is releasing clarity. So as you move back in the hallway, if you squint, you can see that past this area in the drawing, there is nothing that is even nearly as light as the lights that are up here. And if you think of it kind of sequentially, you know, this is going to be the brightest area. Think of it like a bullseye. This outer boundary is going to have the most detail, the most variation in value, the highest contrast. And as you spin in towards the farthest plane, at least in Thaw's work, you're going to have less clarity, less contrast, less value variation, less detail. This actually is pretty good for teaching something that we won't get to in this project, but you will eventually get to, which is the idea of atmospheric perspective in the landscape. As things recede, things get lower in contrast, we see less detail, and in the case of the landscape and color, less intensity of color. Things get grayer towards the background, brighter towards the foreground. That's a general rule. So I would say to have the same brights back here, even this lamp is not going to be as bright in its lighter value as the lamp up here. The only way to get this lamp to be as bright as that lamp is to get the value around it darker. Does that make sense? So I'm going to show you something, and you're going to freak out. So we've talked about value relativity before, but you've never seen it demonstrated, maybe some of you have, as clearly as this. So, the face on the right, the face, this is the face, this is hair. The face on the right, has anybody seen this before? No. The face on the right is exactly the same color as the face on the left. Exactly the same color.
Oh, it's
Say it.
no, it's not.
I mean, it isn't, right?
It's not?
It isn't, but it is exactly the same color. So what is causing that in our eye? Well, the relativity of value. Here's a black and white version of the same thing. Still, the face on the right looks blank compared to the face on the left.
Same.
No, it doesn't.
Different.
How? It looks darker, right? So this is about qualifying darker, lighter, right? We're comparing values. If we were to compare the values, the average person who hadn't been told that the face on the right is exactly the same as the face on the left would say, no, Professor Wilson, you're an idiot. The face on the right looks darker in its complexion than the face on the left, right? So notice if we remove the line between a detail or a crop of the two images and we put them side by side, here it looks lighter, here it looks darker. But here, you see how your eye passes very easily from there to there. And it almost looks like there's a gradation of tone. A very slight one, but a gradation. You guys see that? You've got that nasty look on your face, like you just ate dog poop or something. Why?
I hate color theory stuff.
Why?
Honestly, it's because it looks like it's not gonna do it, but then it does that, and it's crazy.
So you're like, no way. They're different tones.
Well,
They're different
no,
values.
I want to say they're different tones and values.
Well, that's
but
what.
when that
but,
happens,
okay. So, but you're letting your you're letting your desire to fit in and be right to overwhelm the truth, and the truth is it looks darker.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with admitting that it looks darker. The question is why, and how can I overcome it in my work? Because I'm telling you, when you get into painting,
it's us.
you're mixing something on your palette and you're like, this is the right color, and then you put it on the painting and it's the wrong color.
Yep.
So you have to be able to forecast that, to like predict that instability. Does that make sense? Otherwise, you're going to feel like what? You're going to feel bad. You're going to feel like trash. You're going to feel inept. You're going to feel dumb. You're going to get discouraged. Does that make sense? And I would say furthermore, as we move into this image, you have to say to yourself, how can I head off making these mistakes? Because once I have the whole thing covered, what feeling are you going to have? Trash. You're going to be like, why is this not working? Why does this not look right? Does that make sense? Not only that, but you're going to make a guess and it's going to be wrong and you're going to feel like trash. So if you can predict it ahead of time, what does that do to your process?
Helps us push forward.
It helps you push forward faster. Does that make sense? Now, there's nothing wrong with being careful and tentative and like, okay, I'm going to do my best. Drawing is a series of mistakes that I correct. Professor Wilson told me so. That's fine. But our goal is to make fewer mistakes. Does that make sense? Or to make different mistakes each time we move forward, right? Okay, I'm not going to make that mistake again. I'm not going to make that mistake again. In other words, we have to learn from our mistakes. Does that make sense? So, it's not that you like celebrate making mistakes. It's just you don't give yourself such a hard time that you get discouraged and give up. So here they've taken an eyedropper tool and they've picked the color in one of the two faces and they've painted over the border between the two images, and you can see that it's indeed the same color. Yes.
Is there a specific term or phrase for this effect?
It's called simultaneous contrast.
Oh.
So the same color in a different context, or in this case,
It's like
our case, the same value in a different
White,
context
blue,
will
red.
look different, even though it's the same. And I personally don't like the term simultaneous contrast because it sounds really hokey, like, ooh, it's like one of those big philosophical terms. It's value relativity. Relative, right, means when you put two or more things together, they relate to one another, right? We judge them based on their relationship. Does that make sense? We compare them. I'm standing next to America in an empty room. The viewer's going to do what? Compare the differences between America and I. Does that make sense? You okay? Okay. So that relativity of value is basically saying that when you place two values next to one another, their relationship defines them. You put another value in the place of the former next to the same value, it's going to look different. Both of them are going to look different because their values are relative. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Here you can see that the way it was achieved is by the hair and the background. So the gray value is the same in both faces, but when you look at the eyebrow, in the left image is light, and in the right image is dark. You see? In the left image, the lighter brown hair is lighter than in the right image. It's darker. The background, obviously, is darker in the left image and lighter in the right image. So it's those lighter values in the right image that are making that middle gray value look darker. It's the dark colors in the background and in the hair that is making the face look lighter. Does that make sense? So going back to Thaw's image,
I looked at random lights.
where did it go? Until Thaw gets the values right back here, and around here, those windows are not going to be as bright. Squint at those windows. Do they look as bright as when you're squinting at those windows? No. Right? Squint at them. They don't look nearly as bright. Neither does this foreground value. Does that make sense? So we've got to get these values darker, in order to get these values brighter. Now, I would ask, America, is this yours here? Yes. Steal the cash, don't anybody tell. You're like, that's all I have.
Joy, I don't like your sarcasm.
No, that's a compliment.
I just didn't get to it. Okay.
What did you mean?
The railing, she's like, I like how the railing is non-existent.
The railing? Oh, on the...
Circus.
I mean,
Now, what would be easier for Thaw? What would be easier for Thaw to draw the space around that railing and then erase out and darken in that railing, or vice versa?
Just drawing the railing.
Huh?
Just drawing the railing.
No. Draw what's behind the railing first, and then take the eraser and the pencil and draw the railing on top of the background. Why? Because it's going to be really hard to create a contiguous value between here and here if you try to fill in this shape separately than this shape. Does that make sense? I was watching, there's a channel called Draw Mix Paint, which is a really good channel. And he was talking about John Singer Sargent painting of a woman who had a bracelet on. And he was saying, don't paint details first. Don't draw details first. That's a detail. And the reason why is because if you're trying to paint the skin tone and you try to paint a gradation of light to dark over the whole arm on either side of that bracelet,
They're going to be different.
they're going to be different. And it's easier to just paint that and then pull this on top. Does that make sense to everybody? So it's all about strategery, to quote a former president.
strategic.
Now, remember, am I getting this darker? Yeah. So that 14 is going to give you a much darker value. And I don't even have to press harder because I've got this 14. It's going to be greasier, right, and darker because it's a softer lead right away. So do you see how much darker that is and how pansy the rest of Thaw's tones are? Like they're weak, sissified tones.
Worthless.
Okay?
There could have been better terms used.
Say what?
There could have been better terms used.
Oh, I like being mean though. It's fun. So, and notice that I'm using this page to kind of help me to do what?
No, I feel like
Get a sharp
pencil marks
edge.
on the other side.
Yeah, it gives me a sharper edge, although I messed up right there. Sorry, Thaw. I could also just draw kind of lazily over that edge and then take my eraser and pull that edge back on top. But you can see that you can get a much darker edge out of it. All right. So, America, do you want to put yours up there?
Return all of them.
Because
I'm kidding.
I just throw the calls in the trash.
Method looks very good.
Which one is it?
The middle one.
So Thaw, give America some feedback.
It's like kind of like the opposite. Like the outer edge is like darker, and then the farther you go, like not up, but like in, it's like lighter.
Well, yes and no. The value here
Oh yeah,
is
it's
darker, I mean lighter than the value back here.
Mhm.
It's not darker to lighter or lighter to darker, it's higher contrast, darker darks and lighter lights to grayer in the background.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
People want easy. Just tell me, make it darker in the foreground and lighter in the background, or vice versa. Make it lighter in the background and darker in the foreground. Mm-mm. Pairing of contrasts, or pairing of values. Lighter lights and darker darks in the foreground, darker darks against the lighter lights are going to create higher contrast, make the lights seem lighter and the darks seem darker. And if you pair a reduced range of values, so think about the value spectrum, lights, dark should be in the foreground. Should there be grays in the foreground? Yeah, because those are the transitions between the lights and the darks. But in the background, depending on whether it's a dark or a light space, you'll have the dark side of the spectrum, darks to middle grays perhaps. So the lights become middle grays. Or if it's a lighter background, the darks become middle grays and the lights become whites or light grays. Does that make sense? So obviously, America needs to come up in here and push these darks darker. And immediately, those lights will become lighter. It'll become a higher contrast. Now, I will give America props for having the whole page covered with value, right? That's a good thing. The recommendation that I would make is, and this is something that will help save you time, you can either know or assume, where are my blackest blacks? I think looking at this image, it's safe to assume that they're in the foreground, right? And just out of the gate, when you're doing that initial covering, make the blacks black. Does that make sense? I mean, I've been telling you that the whole time. Go in the image. What's the first thing that you should do when we're doing the tonal charcoal on a reductive, or sorry, not a reductive ground, but an additive ground, white? Put the blackest blacks in. Does that make sense? And don't blend them. Because what happens when you blend them? They get lighter. So what I'm trying to show you is that it's a pattern that you're repeating over and over again in every drawing that we've done since we've started doing tonal drawings. Right? So anticipate it, and it will go well with you. Does that make sense? It'll be better and it'll be faster. Stephanie,
Yes.
put yours up there. Stand, people don't upload their images right.
Well, it's kind of done.
Whoa.
That's what I was wondering.
What is?
The computer background.
Can I set yours right here?
That's like an apple, and it keeps changing. Like, it's not letting me keep my background.
I thought you were changing it on purpose.
No. In fact, I changed my computer to say Professor Wilson instead of GR numbers, and it keeps changing back. Which image is yours?
You're good.
That one.
This one?
Yeah.
All right, America, talk to Steph.
I really like, for like the sides, how detailed you made them be. Like you can tell that you put your darkest darks on like the edges and stuff, especially on like the pillars. Yeah, pillars. Yes, the pillars. And I feel like you could have gone a little bit darker, where like on like the edges of like the windows, so like the curve. Can I see the pointer for 2 seconds? Like right here could have gone a little bit darker because it's still kind of light.
And I see almost a gradation from the
Yeah.
corner to the roundness of the window. It gets a little bit darker at the edge of the
Mhm.
light.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actual like texture there as well to help you. You don't have to like make a gradation.
Mm-hmm.
But
Um,
Yeah.
continue.
oh, are you done with your train of thought?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make
Thanks
sure,
for
I don't want to
asking.
keep interrupting. But, I like how at this point, it's like almost like, dark, not as dark as this, but you still got like, the values down. Though at the very end, I would like to see how well you would do this. Other than that, the texture here looks really good for starters, but I feel like you can go a little bit darker, especially on like the tertiary aspects or the texture. But you have a good starting point.
So I'm gonna be really mean to Stephanie.
Oh.
And Stephanie's used to it. The textures that Stephanie did were a complete waste of time. Why?
Because you want us to get the
It's not dark.
primary and
It's
secondary
more
light.
Because you're gonna have to make the ceiling darker.
Yeah, it's way
And then what's gonna happen to the textures?
Good.
They're gonna disappear.
Yeah.
That's why you do primary stuff first and secondary stuff second, and tertiary stuff thirdly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because otherwise you're like wasting 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, however.
erasing over what you were doing.
Essentially, yeah, essentially. So the ground plane is pure white.
Yeah, I didn't get to that point.
The windows are pure white.
Yeah.
Even this tone, or these tones, which seem a little brighter, are not nearly as white as this. So if you went over this whole thing with like a light gray, and then you pushed these more middle-ish grays, and then you put these dark grays on top, you follow me?
Yeah, first start like shading it first and then. add on.
That's the primary, which is the local value, the lightest value in the range of values. That makes sense? And then the secondary values would be the next darkest value
Yeah.
in this case. And then the stripes would be the last. And they're not black,
It's like dark gray.
but they're really dark gray. Here, I might put some blacks. And then notice back here, it's just bleh. Like you can't see the structure that you can see up here. Ceiling needs to be a lot grayer
Yeah.
than it
I'll
is.
darken it.
So like if we made the ceiling this color
Mm-hmm.
and then pushed this color black or closer to black, then we'd have the right setup. Then you can go in with those dark marks, those Voldemorts.
Yeah. Got it.
Okay? Hit pause on that.